Fiat Chrysler are in court. Black box for cars. Porsche getting into F1. Australia is getting clean. Too much emphasis on EVs. Bosch is new man in Ireland. And Mercedes-Benz are making good profit on EVs now. Hello, I'm Paul Callan and welcome to this week's MotorZen news. An independent workshop group and Carglass in Europe are taking a case against Fiat Chrysler. Fiat Chrysler were one of the first companies that came up with the no OBD and with you having to apply to get registration and license fee in order to access the diagnostic platform on their vehicle. The case they're bringing is over the obstructions that have been put in place regarding vehicle data. They're saying this is illegal and they're challenging it in European court. It has started off in a regional court in Callan and now it has gone to the European Court of Justice. We're seeing this on all the new vehicles where we're not having an EOBD. We're having to get then manufacturer clearance and register with the manufacturer and pay a license fee in order to access the data. So this is happening with more vehicles. They're challenging this, so it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome of this is. Also staying with Europe, as and from July 2024, all new vehicles will come with a black box data recorder. This is to record and capture data as a result of an accident. So it's going to be law if you get the vehicle type approved. The manufacturer must have the ability to record data in the event of an accident. There were issues over privacy issues and stuff like this when this was first being developed. It won't record the data unless there is an accident. So it's not permanently recording the data. So there is no data there as such until such time as an accident occurs. When an accident occurs, it'll record speed, it'll record braking, it'll record road position, and also it'll record if ADAS was in use at the time. So they've done research on this, and what they've shown up is that by using these systems, they estimate that they would have a 20% drop in road accidents. But clearly, again, it only relates to the data that will be gathered at the moment of an accident. And also, the data will not be given to insurance companies. But from July 24, 2024, all vehicles will have the ability to record this data. Porsche are entering Formula 1. Now this has been talked about and we've spoken about it a few times on the show. 2026, they're after taking a 50% stake in Red Bull Technologies. It's a 10-year deal to supply power units to Red Bull. So it will be Porsche power units that Red Bull will be using from 2026 on. Two big things with this. We spoke about this earlier in the year that Porsche / Volkswagen Group would join Formula 1 provided they were going to use EFuels. Now, as far as we know, that's what's going to happen. We're going to start using EFuels. And also, one of the big drivers for this was that Porsche Volkswagen Group see how popular Formula 1 is becoming in USA and in China. Maybe to European audience, it's not that big of a deal to the brands, but they're seeing that there's more and more people watching Formula 1 in China and Formula 1 in USA, and they're saying we want to access those markets, and they're going to start to use F1 to do that. Australia, which has been kind of behind the rest of the world as far as EVs and electric is concerned and adopting the new approach to emission reduction. Well, there's a Labour government in there now, so it seems to be that Australia started to come in line with the rest of the world in terms of they're introducing incentives now for people to use EVs, fuel cells, plug-in hybrids. They're giving a benefit in fringe benefit tax benefit in kind tax, they're removing that. So if an employee gets a vehicle, they won't pay a tax, like a benefit in kind tax for it. And also if an employer supplies an EV fuel cell or plug-in hybrid, on a $50,000 car, an employer can probably save $9,000 in taxes by giving the employee that car. What they're setting out to do in Australia is reduce their emissions by 43% to 2030 over their 2005. That's the measuring point, 2005, and they're aiming to get down to zero emissions by 2050. So, you know, the previous government in Australia didn't seem to be too bothered by the emissions and environmental aspects. So this Labour government now seems to be taking this on board and coming in line with the rest of the world in that regard. You've made it to the middle bit again. If you could please like, comment and subscribe. And I listened to another guy on YouTube the other day, and he said it's very important to hit that like button. So that thumbs up as well is supposed to be a big help on YouTube too. So I'm only telling you what he told me. Hit that like button as well. Thanks. The Commonwealth Games took place in Birmingham in the last couple of weeks, and you might be saying, what's that got to do with anything to do with the motor industry or the trade or cars? Well, in conjunction with that, they were having conferences, and one of the conferences they had was to do with new technologies, and they had a discussion and a debate over what's going on with new technologies. And they've got an organisation in the UK called Advanced Propulsion Centre, which looks at all these things. And it was interesting, some of the stuff that they came out with, because what they're saying is they think that maybe the whole technology, the whole propulsion has gone all in the one direction, which is an argument we hear, is that it's all electric. Everything's electric. Well, what they're saying is they think this is actually a little bit dangerous, and that we need to be looking at various forms of propulsion. This is they're talking about BEV, hydrogen fuel cell, hydrogen as a fuel, and e-fuels. But one of the interesting things they came up with on this, and I haven't heard it spoken about before, because on an earlier story we spoke about Porsche and e-fuels, and the Germans have been very strong in pushing the concept of e-fuels. In this debate that took place over in Birmingham, one thing they put on the table was e-fuels used in used vehicle sector. So what they're saying is that the ability to convert people to electric is difficult, they're expensive. What they're suggesting is people will actually say, no, forget about it. We're going to stick with our old petrol or diesel vehicle and we're not going to change. And what they're saying is maybe a wise approach is to use e-fuels in existing internal combustion engines. And they're saying when you take into account the very fact that you haven't manufactured a new vehicle, the overall CO2 damage as a result of using an old vehicle with e-fuels is offset. And this is, I've heard e-fuels been talked about for sure in terms of Volkswagen, Audi group, the Germans in particular, saying, look, the internal combustion engine's not dead. But this is the first time I've heard e-fuels been used in a conversation saying we'll use e-fuels to keep using older vehicles, and that's a really interesting one. The other point they made was that there's a serious problem still with charging infrastructure, and that's constantly comes up everywhere, that if you can convert everybody to the level of electric that you need or want to have to hit your targets, you've got massive problems in terms of charging this thing. So again, the more and more we look at this, it's really sensible approach seems to be a various range of different forms of propulsion. And that's certainly what came out of that conversation. A very interesting story which reflects very strongly on the motor trade in Ireland is that Bosch have appointed a business development manager for the Irish market. Rob Glendenning is the man that's been tasked with developing the parts, equipment and the Bosch service centre garage network. And it's been emphasised that's one of the things that Rob has been appointed to do. And really interesting when you look at Bob's CV, grew up in the trade. Father had a workshop, worked as a mechanic, worked as a service advisor, worked in warranty, worked in as an after sales manager. So definitely has a very wide view of and a wide array of knowledge of the trade and the industry. And to see this man appointed Bosch Business Development Manager, and one of the big tasks that he has is to develop the car service centre garage network. I think it's really interesting that Bosch have looked at Ireland and said there's a lot of potential here in the independent sector. So I'd imagine that all the good independent workshops out there over the next couple of months will be getting a visit from Rob and trying to encourage them down that form of developing their business. Another interesting thing was that the story has been, Mercedes-Benz have just come out and said that the margins on EVs now are almost on par with ICE engines. And this was a conversation, and I think this is also an example of how fast everything moves. At the last couple of years, we're hearing car manufacturers have a problem because they can't make as much money from battery vehicles as they can from internal combustion engines. Well, Mercedes have come out and said now they're almost there. They're almost making as much margin on an EV as they are on an internal combustion engine. And I suppose part of that is that all the relevant components that go into that electric vehicle are possibly coming down in price as you get volumes increasing, prices coming down. So the big concern had been that were some of these car manufacturers going to be viable as a result of committing everything to EV. So in a way, you're seeing all these competing concepts that are taking place in our industry. One that was worrying, yeah, for sure, was whether or not these guys were making enough money. Mercedes are saying, yeah, we're making enough money now. EVs are a good prospect for our business going forward. So it'll be interesting to see if that same trend is followed by other manufacturers as they start to release figures towards the end of the year. Yeah, you made it to the end. So again, like, comment and subscribe. And again, like that guy told me on YouTube the other day, see that like button, hit that like button. It's supposed to help us a lot on YouTube. So if you could do that, we'd be very grateful. See you next week.